Welcome, everyone. It's great to have you here. Today, we're having a conversation with Ashkan Tashvir. The intention of this conversation is to ask Ashkan about his new book, Sustainabilism. And I'm here with Ashkan and Dr. Jordan Alexander. We're having a three-way conversation here, so let's get started. Just to introduce myself, I am an ontological coach. I focus particularly on working with women and business owners. I'm a facilitator, a training designer, an assessor, a systems developer, and so my whole aim here is to just have this conversation with Ashkan to just get why is sustainability so important today. Over to you, Jordan.
Hi, thanks for that, Jeanette. I'm so excited to hear more about this book. As you know, in our business, we focus on innovation, inclusion, and leadership, focusing on transformation. And it sounds like this might be just the thing we're looking for to help coaches and organizations. So I can't wait to get stuck in.
Yeah, absolutely. So today, the focus of this conversation is on why is it vital to look at sustainability of our systems, what it means when a system becomes unsustainable or disintegrates, and why this matters to all of us. So I'd love to introduce you now, Ashkan. Ashkan is the author of 5 books. So this is so exciting today because this is your latest book in the series. You've got the Being book, the Human Being book, the Meta Content book, and the Becoming book, and now the Sustainabilism book. Welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's wonderful to be here with you too and the people that are watching us or listening to us. Yeah, so I think that one of the biggest question comes up the moment we talk about sustainability is are you talking about the ecological, the environmental problems we're dealing with? Is that about the compliance forum and things like that? And the answer is no. Like we're not in this book, we're not talking about environment only at all. As a matter of the fact, we don't really talk about environment much in this book. And we're talking about something that it's not at the distance. It's not something that we may not necessarily relate to on a daily basis. We're talking about systems, all systems, the systems that are sustainable in a true sense. Hence, I call it authentic sustainability. We're talking about the systems that they endure, they last, the systems that they evolve and they remain coherent across the time. Like as the time passes, we want systems to last. Now, this system can refer to our relationship, intimate relationship, or family. It can refer to organizations, teams, businesses that we're building or we are participating in. It can also relate to much larger scale systems such as economy or political systems that we vote in, and they're going to have massive impact on our lives. So therefore, like the use of the word system is quite expansive. Like we're referring to all systems out there. And when we talk about sustainability, we're not just talking about environment, but we're talking about something that it's related to every different systems that we are either designing, implementing, or we're participating in one way or another.
So, Ashkan, we've built incredible technology where, we've built wealth. We've got so much convenience. We've got everything at our fingertips, everything that we ever want. And we've got all these systems that kind of hold our lives together. And as you were saying, they're in organizations, our families, but even our inner state. If all that is there, and yet how is it becoming unsustainable? Can you talk more about what that means?
One thing I would like to touch on even before we directly answer that question is, see, we wish to think that the systemic problems are quite related to the mechanics of systems. What I'm arguing in this book is no, it's actually about human ecosystems. So basically, what we're saying is, in order for the systems to be sustainable so that they can endure and they can evolve and they can remain coherent as we go, we, the human beings, we need to be sustainable, or we need to relate to certain qualities. Actually, we talk about 16 specific qualities in this book. We need to relate to them in a kind of healthy way so that the systems that we design, we implement, we participate in are being sustainable. Yeah. Basically, what is being discussed here is these systems, like who are the people that they design the system, implement these systems, or subscribe to these systems, or even from the get-go, who are the people, who are the ones who demand these systems. We need the system. So it's us human beings. And therefore, in order for us to have these sustainable systems being created and maintained or sustained over time, we need to be sustainable. Yeah. So that is basically what's being discussed. Now, to go back to your question, when we, the leaders, being unsustainable. So, for example, if we have unhealthy relationship with tolerance and patience and things like intention, qualities like intention, trust, these are some of the qualities that we dive deep into, like in this book. For example, like if you see that someone is occupying a position, let's say in an organization, a leadership, a decision making, but the person is not ready at all. The person is not suitable for that role. So that person is occupying that role, and that is going to lead to an unsustainable leadership or a creation of unsustainable systems. If there is ill intentions or bad faith, would say, yeah. So it's like, for example, I'm taking on this role, but from the get-go, I know that I don't want to be that. I don't want to give it what it takes. In a larger scale systems, let's say, for example, a political system, it could be like instead of me in a democratic setting, if I go and I become a candidate and I want to hold the office, and I claim that I want to be public servant, or there's this demand from the citizens that I am to be this public servant, but down deep there I know that I'm a very power hungry person. I just want power for the sake of power. So this is what we talk about in the book when we talk about ill intention or bad faith, distorted relationship with intention. You know, so that can be one example of that. And that obviously then it can lead to mistrust in the systems of organizations and institutions. It can create unsustainable market and so on and so forth. So there are symptoms that we can see when, for example, promises are being made but are not being honored, or for example, we're seeing values are being stated but they're not being lived. So there are symptoms like this on the surface. They may not be the most visible ones, where they may not appear to be visible and immediately we can catch them, but they're there. So if we pay attention to them deliberately, intentionally, we can see that the signs of disintegration of the system is showing up. It's like where we can see the systems that we have created that they are not able to support their own weight. Yeah.
There's also Ashkan. I mean, seeing some of the breakdowns, that's quite almost apparent. But there's also this feeling. So so a lot of people nowadays seem to be feeling the breakdown that's occurring, but no one can wrap their arms and legs around it to name it. So how do you discuss what's beneath the surface in a way that makes sense?
Yeah. So that's a very, at least that as we can see it, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, that's because of the nature of breakdown or disintegration of systems. It's normally like you don't have the system collapse overnight, yeah? So it's quite sometimes slow process that starts at some point and gradually you can see those symptoms that we were talking about, and gradually you get at the verge of breaking down so that ultimately the system may disintegrate. So because of that nature is like, for example, when you are putting on weight. So you're not taking care of your diet and you don't exercise and everything. It's not like all of a sudden, you're going to wake up in the morning, go, oh, wow, like I have 15 kilograms, extra kilograms of weight. So because the process is quite subtle and quiet and gradual at times, then we may not immediately see it, but we can feel something is not in its place. Like we see that, like the coherence is being compromised, the integrity, we're not being of integrity. Something is fishy, something is not working. We can feel the burnout, but we may not be able to fully articulate it. So one of the things that we do in this book, quite systemically, actually, with the models and the tools that the book introduces, what we do is we give you that language. The book gives you that language so that you can articulate it. You can zoom out, you can look into the elements within a system and see if they are operating in an optimal level, or there is certain areas that it requires our attention, particularly from a leadership perspective. Now again, like, this is not all about like systems, like technological systems, political systems, economical systems. It's you are part of systems. That's what I would love for the audience or potential audience for the book, the readers, so they know that you are already either designing systems, whether it's at home, in our kitchen, all the way to the way that we create a dynamic in our family, all the way to the business that we have, even if you are a sole trader, if you are a consultant, a coach, a person who's created a job for herself, you are creating system. You want lead generation system. You want revenue generation system. You're dealing like with so many different bits and pieces of technology so that it facilitates your communication, all the way to, if you are paying taxes, which we all do, you are part of a taxation system. If you go and vote in a political system, you are part of it. So it's the system we design, we implement, or we participate in. Yeah, so I would like to depict this picture that it's quite related to all of us. And we should care about the sustainability of this system, because the sustainability of your financial system basically leads to either financial prosperity for your family, purchase power, all that, or it's going to lead to certain consequences that ultimately you need to be dealing with. Yeah. So yeah.
Yeah. I'm curious. I'm really curious, because as a geographer, I think as soon as someone says the word sustainable, you mentioned about the environment. How did you make that jump, or how did you go from a term that's very much sort of wrapped up in that environmental side of things? Was there a moment where the eureka moment, or how did it transpire for you?
I mean, like the term was, in a reductionist way, was reduced to, so sustainability has never been all about like environment and ecology. Like any system needs to be sustainable. Like, that's what we demand. That's what we need. Otherwise, the society is going to fall apart. Yes, I understand that in the recent time, the term was reduced to basically talking about for example, the SDGs by United Nations, Document 2030, or certain activists or certain policymakers are quite obsessed with that term. But actually, deliberately, I wanted to zoom out and I wanted to bring it to our attention that it's not just this compliance forum ticking the boxes, but there's something more axiomatic, something more relevant to our everyday life in our businesses or our organizations, families, in relationships, that requires attention. And basically, I try to expand that term so that it covers a larger domain, which is more relevant to majority of the people. So it's not me who just redirected that literature, but it's basically, I think that the term was hijacked, but yeah, so I'm trying
Yeah,
to
so
my
it's
best to basically
thinking of a potential reader. It's so much more than just an environmental sustainabilism. So I think sustainability. So really trying to distinguish that, because it's much bigger than that, and it's system wide
yes,
rather than that narrow focus. So there's so much more potential in that as a
definitely.
domain.
Yes, yes, and that's exactly where the title of the book, Sustainabilism, is coming from. It's not introducing a new ism. I think that's the last thing we need in our era. It's a kind of ironic use of the word. Basically, I position sustainabilism as a kind of a cult of sustainability. It has turned into a man-made religion type of thing that certain people are quite obsessed with that. I position that and against this thing that I call it authentic sustainability, which is broader and more relevant to various different systems that we have. And the book starts with a critique and then doesn't stay there because it provides solutions and tools and everything so that how we can address it and go forward. But it starts with the critique of this kind of scripted, prescribed, or performative sustainability discourse. Now, I'm not saying that that's out
Mm.
of merit. We don't necessarily need to talk about the details of that, but that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about something way more fundamental than creating compliance forums and creating policies on the surface, but more an inherent evolution and of any systems, as I've explained, so that they can endure and they can regenerate. And when we're dealing with decay, then there's a chance and possibility for renewal. That's basically what's being discussed there. Yeah.
Okay. Now we've given our listeners a picture of what sustainability is from this perspective, and
Mm.
so they can see that their own system, it's important for their own system to be sustainable, and then the organizations that they work in, the families that they live in. What are some of the signs? How can someone go, oh, how can I pinpoint whether something here is not sustainable?
Yeah, so the biggest one is the workability is going to be under question. Things are not going to work, or if they work, you may be able to measure momentums, like you being effective in certain decisions that you make or certain actions that you take. But at the end of the day, you're going to see that they're not consistent, they're not lasting. So that's why I use the term sustained effectiveness. So we don't want the business
Mm.
just to work today and then collapse tomorrow. Yeah, we don't want to build a team so that we deliver only this project and then for the next project everyone is exhausted and no one wants to work with each other. So basically, it's not just the effectiveness or the probability of you hitting the objective that you set for yourself, but actually bringing longevity in it. So we want that to last. So we will be often want a relationship that lasts and you can build and you can thrive. So if you see that something is thriving, there's an ease and flow you can sense. So this is the on the positive side, the constructive side. But then if you see that no things are, you deal with the stagnation, you feel stuck, you feel that you can clearly see that the things are not operating at an optimal level. And these are some of the signs that high level signs that you can see in a system that is not being sustainable. Let me introduce a part of the model. So there's few different models that in this close to over 1,000 pages of book have been developed. But so there's this part that I'll call it the disintegration sphere. So simply put, without going into too much details, so imagine that there's this limniscate or the infinity sign. Yeah. So we would love to think that integrity or coherence is something that it's a linear thing. You go towards it and you land there, you reside there, sorry, and you're going to have a happily ever after type of life. Yeah. But that's not how it works. So therefore, I use this limniscate or the infinity sign to say that, see, we often move to integrity or we move to disintegration. Yeah. So it's not a fixed state to be in integrity or disintegration for any system. It can be our mental health, it can be our relationship, teams, organizations, the whole society, economy, or politics, any system basically. So I do my best in the book to expose that illusion that we have that, oh yeah, like I want to go towards integrity, I'm going to reside there. So that's not going to happen. Or saying goodbye to this kind of misconception, very common misconception that, oh, see, this system is not working at all, completely, or this system is perfect. No, we don't have, it's not a binary, it's not a dichotomy that it's either this or that. We often see ourselves in this transition from one state to another. And that's exactly where leadership comes to play. And you want to, and I'm not talking about leading people, leading organizations necessarily, being of influence, even in your own life. So, in a more expansive sense, we're talking about leadership. So, you want to be able to influence these transitions and become intentional about them and then see what you can do. Now, when it comes to the disintegration sphere, I call it, as you brought up the question, so there's a pattern that I would like to describe this pattern, and I hope that's going to resonate with the people that are watching us or hearing or listening to us. We introduced shadows, and shadows is a term that I use to refer to any distortion, any misunderstanding, yeah, something that we don't have a deep, authentic understanding, congruent understanding of them. So these distortions are there. Now, if we don't address them, if we don't address these shadows as soon as we can, they can lead to an external condition, which I refer to these conditions as misery. Now, misery is being used as a generic term here in a very unique way. Is a cluster word for any trivial discomfort, all the way to like hardships, difficulties, adversities, catastrophes, and crises. Yeah, and everyone has experienced a level of that in their life, and that's the, like no one can say that, oh, I don't resonate with this. We deal with difficulties, hardships, and adversities, and so on and so forth. So basically, if these shadows, these distortions are not being addressed, then they're going to lead to external conditions. I refer to them as misery. Now, the misery, that external condition, is going to be experienced by us, the sentient beings, us human beings. And our experience, subjective or intersubjective, experience of that condition is what we refer to it as suffering. Now, different people are going to suffer differently, and they're going to be dealing with that condition, those kind of conditions differently. Now, here's the thing. If the misery or the condition is keep reinforcing itself because we're not addressing it, we're just like letting it be or letting it grow to more disastrous condition. If the condition, the misery, keeps reinforcing itself and we don't do much about it, and the experience of suffering is now self-sustaining, then we're going to be pushed into this fourth quality that I talk about, which I refer to it as entrenchment. You're going to be entrenched, or the system is going to be entrenched, entrapped. It's going to feel like, or sometimes is in a way, that as if there's no way out. You're stuck. And that's exactly where you get at the verge of breaking down. So the system is about to collapse, yeah? So a lot of, for example, economists, they're warning us, it's quite a good time, quite a good amount of time, that the way that our modern economy is going, or economics is going, is actually not sustainable. This is not a new conversation. We know that the way that we keep manipulating the currency, we keep increasing the interest rate, decreasing the interest rate. We basically were dealing with a tremendous amount of deficit and debt in most modern economies of the world. It's not a failure of economy of a country, but actually the science of economics. So this is being warned by the experts in the field. Yeah. So that's just an example. That's basically like where those shadows are not being addressed. Certain shadows are, for example, like we're not taking care of our GDP, we're not taking care of our expenditure, we're not innovating enough, we're not pushing entrepreneurship and certain things that we can do. So those shadows are not being addressed. It's going to lead to this misery. People are going to deal with inflation. They're going to be dealing with decreased purchase power, and the quality of life is going to decrease. And they're going to start experiencing suffering in various different forms. And to the point that if we get entrenched, we get at the verge of breaking down, and the system may actually collapse. And that can show itself in certain kind of like things like recession, depression, economical situations like that we've experienced. For example, 2008, 2009 in the United States. It's a very famous one. Yeah, and so this is basically the pattern that is used in the body of work to describe how this integration happens. Now, I would like to also touch on this before I pass it to you, is when we talk about this integration, we're not necessarily seeing it as a negative thing. So we're not saying that, for example, you need to keep your marriage or your relationship at all costs. No, sometimes, or economy, or any like political party or anything, or sometimes organizations and corporates, and we had the experiences of that a lot. Sometimes it's actually better for that system that cannot endure, cannot last, it's not remain coherent, to actually collapse and disintegrate. And that opens
Mm,
the space for renewal. And I know that
mm,
we can find it harsh, general speaking, but basically what I'm trying to say is when we talk about disintegration, we're not inherently seeing it as a purely negative phenomenon. Yeah. Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Ashkan, is for the sake of our listeners right now, you talked about
Mm.
shadows, and it feels like that this is the starting point. Like you
Yeah.
as an individual, or me as an individual, Jordan as an individual, we're walking around with these kind of shadows. So this unhealthy aspects of us that are really not performing very well. But then that can impact upon the family system or the organizational
Of
system.
course.
So how do we get there to sort of recognize that we've got this shadow behind us? It's like it's there with us. And then how can we support each other within a system
Mm.
in order to
Mm.
see these shadows? Yeah. And then do something about it.
Yeah. Well, like you already touched on it yourself. Like, I think that the first step is to bring that vulnerability, and we talk about it in the being framework for your work. So we need to bring that vulnerability to actually want to see and not put our head in the sand. And it requires a level of humility, or epistemic humility to be exact, like for us to not think that seeing our, for example, political ideology or any sort of ideology has the complete theory of everything. It's going to basically give answers to all sort of problems that we have, and genuinely seek solutions. Now, the starting point is to do a level of diagnosis, and that's exactly what, like in the book that we talk about, we have series of tools to actually identify these patterns. So that's the first step. Like you want to be able to see the patterns of dysfunction and lack of sustainability. The moment you see that, then we basically need to see like what would be the alternative, like in that context, or the system that you are designing, implementing, participating in. Now, if, for example, we're talking about a business, then you see the symptoms. You see that the revenue is not being generated, the proper financial structure is not placed, different bits and pieces of that system is not systemized enough, and it's the time to zoom out, looking at the patterns, and seek support, and yeah, come up with the solution. But what we do in the book, so we have a series of tools for diagnosis. I don't think that we have enough time to go through them here, but like there is a series of tools for diagnosis to generate that level of clarity that is necessary for us to first acknowledge that certain things not in place and we are dealing with lack of sustainability, and then we go towards the solution and everything. Again, there's models in the book described, and also there is a measurement tool called the Sustainability Profile. It's an online measurement tool for those of the people that are watching us or listening to us that are familiar with the being framework and the being profile, particularly in the ontometric tool that we have through questionnaire. It can measure the health of relationship of individuals and teams with various different aspects of being, like courage and commitment and authenticity and anxiety, proactivity, assertiveness, and qualities like that. Similar to that, in the scope of sustainability with this book and the framework that it offers, which we refer to as authentic sustainability framework, there is an assessment tool that measures the health of our relationships with 16 key qualities that basically is being discussed in this book. So these are like the tools that help us to actually see the patterns first, to be able to, it gives us this vocabulary and language so that we can articulate these patterns of dysfunction and lack of sustainability, and then looking into ourselves as the designers and the ones who are building these systems and participating in these systems and even critiquing these systems. Then we look inward and we're going to see like what is the health of our relationship with certain key qualities that I found through this study that are extremely vital when it comes to us creating these sustainable systems. Qualities like intention, trust, and sovereignty, and like we talked about shadows and misery, and suffering and entrenchment, or other qualities like patience and tolerance and adaptability, and so on. So it helps us actually look inward and see how we are being, that the system that we're designing are like this. Because see, by trade, I'm a system designer, and sometimes I'm being asked, how come, why you're talking about individuals and people so much while you're a system designer? Isn't it like we need to go and work on the mechanics and the structure of this architecture of the systems? And my answer is no, because at the end of the day, we cannot bring people from Mars to design these better, more effective systems. It's us, human beings, who are I'm repeating myself many times, we design, implement, and participate in this system. We are the ones who give life to these systems that we subscribe to. So in order for us to build better systems, whether it's going to be healthcare, it's going to be taxation, it's going to be policy making, anything, or businesses and families, we need to become more robust, resilient, more polished beings ourselves. Because the systems that we have out there are merely the reflection of how we are being collectively. So this is the thing that I would love to bring the attention of people to. So it's not just the mechanics, it's about the human ecosystem. It's about how and who we are being. And so it requires this participative leadership. It's not just certain organizations, global organizations sitting there creating policies and pushing agendas and everything. It's more about what is my participation in even these larger scale problems that we're dealing with. Yeah.
It almost sounds like when you think about, it's not a self-help book. It almost feels like a system help book, and there's so many components to that. Is there sort of one key message? I can't wait to read it. I know Jeanette's read it, but I'm itching to get there. But what one key message do you feel that readers really need to take away from today's conversation, Ashkan?
Well, like I know that like when we talk about like these terms of terminology we use, like sustainability, it may be very mouthful, and some people may go, oh, like this is too intellectual for me, or like this is not something that I can do something about. I would love this thing to land through this communication that no, it's about your life, it's about your business, it's about like every system that directly or indirectly you are part of, you're designing, you're building. It matters for us to actually contribute in building this more sustainable system. The systems that they last, they endure, they remain coherent over time, and they evolve. And the key message is like most of these systems are the systems that we are creating ourselves. Hence, we can reconstruct them, we can refine them, we can reconstruct them. I would love us not to panic when we see there's dysfunction. Yes, it can be frustrating and everything, but to own it collectively, no matter who you are, how small or big contribution you may think that you can have, the way that you engage with different systems matters so much. And ultimately, it's again like in order for us to design these better systems and implement these better systems, we need to become better people ourselves. So that's basically where I would encourage us through my whole body of work, and particularly now with the sustainability book, to look inward and then see how we relate to these various different qualities that's being discussed in this framework.
Oh, the body of work is incredible, Ashkan. I do congratulate you on we both do, on your entire body of work. And Jordan and I use that for ourselves and within our business. And we are constantly, assessing the sustainability of our collective business, and how we work with other human beings as well. So you've got a book launch coming up, which is really exciting, a book launch for Sustainabilism. So if you're listening and you'd like to join the book launch, you can click the link and that'll take you to that. And this is just your way. So if you're just sitting here thinking, oh, yeah, this sounds really fascinating, it's your chance to explore. The book launch is going to be your chance to explore how you can start seeing and strengthening the systems around you. Yeah. And in the book launch, Ashkan's going to go deeper into the ideas from the book, and the guest speakers will be talking about that from their perspective as well. The link will be in the description for you to register and log on. Thank you so much for being with us today, Ashkan. We really appreciate all you do and your perspective on the world.
Thank you. Thank you very much, both of you. And thank you, everyone, for watching us.